Tiffany, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you. I love to start with business in the front. So will you tell us about Vanguard Media Online and what you're doing these days?
Absolutely. Well, I am the founder and CEO of Vanguard Media Online. It is a magazine and a general platform for women in the cannabis space. I am so proud and so humbled all at the same time to be able to provide this for ladies in cannabis. I've always felt like we didn't always get all the accolades that we deserve for the product creation and the innovation and the thought process and leadership in the cannabis space. And, I've been at cannabis for a while, almost 30 years now, and nothing has really changed. So I was like, we've got to do something to uplift voices. So I decided, let's just put a spotlight out there and let's have women parade through and talk about what it is that they do and how and why, and empower them. And that's the whole idea of Vanguard. It's a movement for women in cannabis.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. What's the website?
It is vanguardmediaonline.com.
Fantastic. Because you can never, these days, there's all the dot other things. So vanguardmediaonline.com, very straightforward. I'll put the link down below in the episode description so you can find it. And also you're on Instagram, right?
I am. And that is at Vanguard_media_online.
Keep it simple. Yeah. So Tiffany, 30 years in the cannabis industry. Tell me some tales. How did you get started and keep going, and where has that taken you? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Look, it was before industry, so I can never say the cannabis space because this was long before industry. I entered through activism and of course, cannabis usage. I enjoyed it, and as we all did. And there was just a huge. We were in a pandemic of AIDS and HIV, and especially in the queer environment and in our community, there was a problem and a need, and the illness was just tremendous. It was tremendously devastating, and people were reaching out to help themselves, to have a better quality of life. And cannabis was bringing that quality. It was much needed. And friends and whom I'm considered family were struggling and suffering, feeling horrible, and utilizing cannabis. And then on top of that, being treated like criminals for doing so. And there was no compassion. And this fight preceded me, of course. It was a long fight, and I'm just happy and proud to have been a small piece of the puzzle that helped bring compassion to the forefront. And we acted within willful disobedience, or whatever you want to call it. We brought weed to people. We made sure they got it for free, low cost, whatever we could do to make sure that they had what helped them kind of guarantee quality of life when quantity wasn't certain. Didn't know how long you were going to live. You've just received the news that you're positive with HIV, or you're in the hospital or just getting home from the hospital because you've been wasting away, or you're having adverse reaction to medications, or just any of the devastating effects, both physical and mental, that these people were going through. And how do you sit by and watch your family suffer? And so it was a huge driving force to jump in, and it was grassroots. We raised money to be able to get more, to buy more weed. We gathered signatures by the thousands and hundreds and thousands, as much as we could, to help other people fighting larger fights. We traveled, we did speeches, we held rallies, we held space in front of the Capitol in many areas, and did what we could just to make sure that our friends and family were taken care of and not treated like criminals. And that's where it started. That's where my passion comes from, of helping people, because this plant helps people. And on through the years, of course, there was times where we acted on behalf of cannabis, but we did it from the shadows because, you know, we were still either college students or we still had to work and things like that. And it wasn't an industry for us to come out and go, hey, this is where I work. This is how I work, right? And just kind of building into that. And then as it became stronger that we were going to have laws that would allow us to have collectives where we could still help people by collecting our monies and our grows and things like that. That was wonderful, a great environment. And then it just bridged into this regulated market, which I will quite transparently and honestly say is not always the greatest. We're heavily taxed. We're too governed. It's a lot. But it's far from where we began, and I'm grateful for the momentum. But there's a lot of work to be done, and I intend to still be a part of that change. You know, and that brings me to today. Those are the stepping stones and the driving force to why I feel that there needs to be some place for persons of color and women to be able to share what they've done and pump up what it is that they currently do, and just kind of receive that recognition and be able to press forward and feel empowered, like there's something behind them that's pushing them as well. Propulsion, it's key in this because we're out there all dealing with the same product. And I think propulsion is something that women don't always get. There's a lot of that out there, and hey, you got this for men, and not as much and not enough for us women. So I just said it just steamrolled into this, and who knows if in the next 10 years what it will steamroll into. But I'll tell you this, I'll always be helping people with this plant. I don't see that as ever changing.
That's so awesome. I love that you were just out there doing what was right rather than what was legal, because those things don't, I just want to say this for everyone listening, those things do not always align. If you watch any of the Harry Potter movies, during a time when the government is blundering, like your government, wherever you live, because there's people who listen to this from all over the world, it is just such a stark reality that like governments don't exist necessarily for the best interests of the people, and are certainly not empathetic to the best interests of the people. So I'd love that you were out there just taking it into your own hands, Order of the Phoenix style. Now I'm getting very Harry Potter. But just doing it and bringing that compassionate care to people. Tiffany, I'm going to ask you to be a visionary for a minute and just tell me, like, ideally, like, what does the landscape look like if we're able to just topple everything and start fresh with cannabis? Like, what does it look like? How do people have access, and how does that look, right?
Yeah, that's such a great question. The vision is pretty clear for me. Based on what we've had to deal with and how we've been influenced, I think that if all these walls were torn down, that the first thing we'd have to do is rebuild with education and people understanding the true efficacies of the plant and its usage, the multitude of things that can be done with this herbal plant, right? And just kind of that understanding of how the plant works with our systems. I think that we just need to really we would go back to the bare bones of cannabis, the endocannabinoid system, lifestyle, and choice. Because I feel like all those things over the years have been snatched away and oppressed for so long that we don't even know where we stand within it. And we're out there making big decisions based off of dollar signs because we don't even know where we stand in positioning with this plant. Is it helpful? Is it medicinal? Is it, what is it? So I think that ultimately any vision forward has to start there, just rebuilding. And I think from that, we can find a true unity that we all really are speaking the same language in regards to cannabis and move forward from there.
Yes, absolutely. Now that you've mentioned unity, will you talk more about unity in cannabis and how important that is?
Absolutely. I think look, unity is important in everything. We are but one human race, and we divide so much, and it's so juvenile. But within the cannabis space right now, what we're really doing, the haves and the have-nots. We're willing to push forth dollar signs and leave behind our legacies, and it's just not fair, and that's definitely not united. I think that what that really looks like is everybody's really pushing for, federal legalization and decriminalization, and I understand it. I understand they look very attractive, but on the scheme of things, when I look out to the United States in which I live, where I'm a citizen, and I go, we don't all even speak the same language state to state when it comes to who deserves to be in the cannabis space. We're still having conversations about social equity. We're still trying to include people. And so that's not united enough for our federal law of the land to put a blanket law over us when we are underneath that blanket, still kind of fighting and tugging and pulling. So I think that true unity means that we open up the states and we start building models based off of what's working. And then that becomes our kind of our united voice of cannabis across the country, before we say, well, this is the ruling law of cannabis from one coast to the next. We don't even look the same from one coast to the next in cannabis. So how do we apply the same law and rule? And so I think that, that comes back to the people. We have got to educate people state to state what cannabis means in their state, what cannabis means to you, and understanding while we're doing that, equity and inclusion, that everyone deserves to be a part of something they can be in. So let's just open the doors and drop these barriers to entry, and let's unitedly gather into this space of cannabis and see what type of industry we're creating and how we want it to look for the country. And I get it. I get, we do need banking. We do need tax reform. We need a few things that the government could surely help us with. The federal government can surely help us with in this space. It just needs to be done right. I won't get into deeply to the MORE Act passing the House, but I will lightly say that if that's any indicator, we're not being heard. And I'll leave it there, but that is not what unity looks like for cannabis.
Yeah. So in unity in cannabis, is it everyone who has a stake in cannabis coming together and kind of creating unified principles and movement? Or is it like, because I've also heard unity within, like, especially women and minorities in cannabis, just to make sure that, like, we uplift each other. I'm just curious, like, what your vision for unity is.
If we are all uplifting each other and the blinders come off about race and sex, then there's no reason to have these huge teams just dedicated to diversity and inclusion. We have these things are in existence simply because we don't see it that way. Yeah. So unity does look like the stakeholders and those who have any hand in operations of cannabis. If you're hiring people and you're still wondering about, well, how many women do I have? How many Blacks do I have? How many Mexicans do I have? If you're still worrying about those types of rudimentary questions, then you're part of the problem. If you can't look at a resume and it sounds like something that doesn't need to be said, but I feel like I need to say this because it's still happening. If you can't look at a resume and then wonder, is this person white or Black? If you're still asking yourself those questions in your mind and you know who you are because you're doing it, then you're a part of the problem. You're the reason why we have to have something that tells you something as simple as don't discriminate against people. We control racism and sexism. We control those things by playing into it constantly, making it about that. So if we want it to stop, seems pretty simple. Just stop doing it. Change your mind, pivot your mind to a different area and stop doing it. Then we won't have to focus so much time, monies, efforts into diversity and equity and inclusion. You will already understand how to act like a decent human being and not base things off of superfluous views of whatever.
Absolutely. And it's like a lifetime's work to dismantle all of that stuff. That's just
you bet it is.
People. Yeah.
You bet it is. We have got a system of racism and sexism that runs incredibly deep for hundreds of years. There's a lot of work. We're not going to get it done, and we're not going to get it done from this one conversation. We're not going to get it done from me trying my best to do what it is that I do and the hundreds of other people who are doing the same work. We're not going to get it done like that. that fast because it has been so long. But these are the roots of it. When you tear down systemic racism, it has definitive pain points of why this is going on. And it's a choice. Do we keep doing it or not? And since we have kept doing it, why?
Yeah. Why? I mean, it all kind of comes down to power, just power hoarding. Just so rough. Do you have any like favorite books or resources that you send to people if they want to do that work on their own? I mean, you don't have to, but
I do have books that I comb through and that I do refer, but I don't right now endorse any books.
okay.
So this is why I don't put out a list. I thought about doing that, but I really want to, before I put that out publicly, I want to kind of comb through the things that I've read over the years and really put thought into putting together a list, and not just the shoot from the hip favorites that I think that I like, but what really truly could help. And because I'm glad you asked the question, because I've been asked the question a couple of times, and it put me on the train of thought of I should be putting out just a small book list of things that I feel have helped over the last few decades. And I really want to give good thought to that, but I will definitely share it with you and everyone else when it is together, because I think it's wonderful.
Please do. I'm going to put a plug for my favorite book that it's anybody who is struggling with their body. This is the book I suggest, but I also suggest it for race, class, and any other sort of bias training, which is The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. It's so good. And it really talks about the intersections of body liberation, because it's all of those things. Every oppression intersects on the body. And I think so many of us, including white, cisgender, thin men, right? Like of class privilege, they also struggle with their bodies and they don't even realize it. And so like reading a book like this helps you kind of like start to unpack it for yourself. And I just think like the more work people do on themselves, the more empathy they can have. And the more, like we were talking before we even started recording about the pandemic and mask wearing and just a sincere lack of empathy for other people, which has made this pandemic last so long. And all of that, I mean, comes down to just people not being conscious of what's going on in their brains. And when you read a book like that, that forces you to confront, like, how do you feel about your body? And how do you feel about other bodies? And just unpacking all of that stuff, I think is super helpful. Because it's a deep dive inside to do that work, and not just be like, oh well, we've hired the X many people, so we're not racist anymore. Just not how it works. Tiffany, let's change gears. I would love to hear more about your personal life, kind of growing up. Were you always like an activist, a creator, a sort of frontline person? Were you always different, or did you kind of coast until eventually you kind of politicized?
No, if I look back even to when I was quite young, I have always been an activist, so to speak. I have always tried to help people through times that were adverse for them. I was the kid who wouldn't allow others to pick on someone. Befriended those who everyone's like, I don't want to be friends with her. I'm not going to be friends with him. And those, I made a point to make those people my friends and give them a voice. I think that it's taken a long time to be able to put the hat on. And in some ways it still feels a little funny, but I think that is my calling. My calling is to give a voice to those who have trouble finding theirs, because we're all deserving. I've always felt that we're all the same. I was different from everyone else. I grew up in a predominantly Caucasian environment. And I was always different. I wasn't treated differently, and I can thank my stars that I wasn't a person who really had to deal with the separatism and the racism like that until I was much older. So it didn't keep me from any opportunities or cloud my growth, right? But I've always felt like if someone needs someone in their corner, why am I not using my energy there? And I've done it all my life, and I think I will continue to do that. And it just became, like I said, it's always hard to take that deep look at yourself and go, what is your true calling? What is it that you're manifesting? and how is it applied to the world? And are you willing to pick it up and put your hat on and go on? And sometimes my hat falls over to the side and I go, no, I'm going to put it back on. This is what you do, Tiffany. You definitely stand up for those who need it. And if someone's voice isn't loud enough and you know that they deserve more, you can put your voice behind it too and help out. So I think I've kind of always been that activist mindset.
I love it. And you grew up in California?
I did.
Yeah. In Sacramento area?
Yeah, Northern California. Yep, Sacramento area, Carmichael.
Carmichael. I went to UC Davis, so I have a lot of heart eyes for that whole area. And when did you come out? And what will you tell me your coming out story?
Sure. Mine isn't fantastic. Because there's a lot out there. People have these great coming out stories or these tragic coming out stories. And I think I came out in my own way, on and off. It took the only tragic portion of it personally is the fact that it took me so long to not accept it for myself, but to stop worrying about what friends and family thought. I went as far as I was married to a man previously. And so, I really did toggle back and forth, not in my heart, but really in the whole idea of the environment. And that is, what I call being tragic. That's personal tragedy, because, if you're not really living your life, then you're not living your life. So I think my true coming out was just that acceptance that who I am and what I feel and what I've always known about myself is my right. It's my right to know it and feel it. And if it's my right to know it and feel it, it's my right to spread it about. And that realization was my true coming out. And it was so liberating. And it helped me to not have to worry what everybody else was thinking about me and my personal life. Because, when we come out, I think that the first thing that everybody wants to know is these deep dive things about your relationships and your personality. And it's like, whoa, if someone says they're getting engaged, do we start talking about their sex life and their, and how long have you felt this way and all this other stuff? And I go, they don't have rights to that. That's mine. And so I think that in the way that I came out, I think that it liberated me. And my advice to everybody is to find a way that liberates you, because our stories are not all the same on any account. And you might be able to gather courage or inspiration from someone else's story, but ultimately it's got to be your own, because it's your right.
Yeah.
Not a choice.
I love the way you talk about liberating your mind and all of that. I'm an unusual person, because my mom is also queer, and she identifies, I think, as gay, but it was interesting because she came out a little bit, or for a brief period of time when I was very young, too young to remember, for about like 3.5, 4 years, and then went back in the closet for a long time. And it was really interesting just to like have to then as a teenager learn about that. And then because she came out again when I was 16, while I was like kind of wrestling with my sexuality. But the weirdest part was that I didn't even know gay was a thing you could be. Even though I had known gay adults my whole young life, I didn't understand that was something, like it never clicked, right? Like I just never got it. And there were no like out celebrities at that time, and no media about it. And so it was like this weird place where I just felt like I didn't deserve my own sexuality, because I didn't really understand it. And I needed other people to show me what was possible. And this has always been true for me, is like, once I see that it's possible, I'm like, oh, wait, okay. And it's like those clicks. But I love that when you came out, it was like a fortitude in your mind of like, this gets to be for me. And really even understanding that like people don't interrogate straight people near the same as they do queer folks. Right. So interesting.
They basically take away our voice by asking us such personal questions and trying to put our love lives on display. They take away our voice, and we have to take it back. no, I'm not going to answer these questions, you know? And I mean, it's so funny at my age, still fielding those types of questions. They ask him in a roundabout, well, which of you do this? And I'm like, why are you asking me which of me, between me and my wife, do this or that? What are you trying to get at? What is it that you're really wanting to ask? I just put it right back to them. What are you really wanting to ask me that you're having trouble asking? Go ahead and ask it. And if I feel it's appropriate enough, I'll answer. And if it's not, I'll tell you it's inappropriate. And then that will help you have better conversations later on.
Yeah. Oh,
you just have to take it back.
That's really smart too, because the person who's asking the question is the person who has the power in the conversation. And you don't have to answer every question that someone gives you. No. And the best way to deflect is to respond with a question. I always just like to ask just straight up, like, oh, what's inspiring you to ask them? Or answer that first and then I'll answer it.
Yep. That's the only way to do it. It is. They've got to figure out, I mean, the person has to understand that, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe I'm overreaching the boundary. Yeah. You know, because society tells everyone that it's okay to question us. It's okay to make us into oddities. And so as long as society is backing them up, they need to understand that maybe perhaps you're being supported in crossing boundaries with people. Mm-hmm. And for all of us, and I don't care what situation it is, if you feel your boundaries are being crossed, you're the only one who can say something. And you have every right to. It's yours. So you have to take ownership of that and go, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to answer that question. Or I would, if you would, phrase the question differently, or don't ask that question. Simple as that. It's all acceptable. Yeah. It's okay to stick up for yourself.
It is okay to stick up for yourself. If you hear anything in this podcast, hear that. It's okay to stick up for yourself. And no is a complete sentence. That's my favorite thing about boundaries.
Yes, I love that.
Because we're so socialized to just make everything okay and make everyone else okay. And that's not our job. Our job is to be us. As I feel, I mean, to get spiritual, I just feel like we're all unique expressions of God, and we're all just like in this experiment of life. And you don't have to understand everybody else, and you don't have to understand people to love them, and they don't have to understand you to love you. And seeking to understand is a great way to approach conflict, but it's also like you don't have to figure it all out. You can just be. And we don't teach our kids how to do that. And so we grow up with a lot of people who are just needing to make other people other instead of understanding everyone's different. Yep. Yeah. And the thing, what really has surprised me recently is the more work I do within straight communities or straight dominant communities, when you're like the out queer amongst that, everyone low key comes up, and not everyone, but many people low key come up and come out to me. They're like, oh, I'm married to a man, but I'm really queer, right? And like, but they're not out. And so I think Honey Boo Boo said this, and I can't believe I'm quoting Honey Boo Boo. Maybe I can't believe it. But she said everyone's a little bit gay. And I'm like, you're right, Honey Boo Boo. Everyone is a little bit gay. Like, it's just so much more common than I think we're socialized to believe. And it's so weird that we other people so. Tag that community. Tiffany, are you willing to tell me how old you are, just so that folks can relate to you?
Oh yeah, no problem. Actually, my birthday is on the 16th, and I will be turning 48 years old.
48 years old. So exciting. And a Sagittarius.
I am a Sagittarius, yes.
Do you know your moon and rising signs?
I think I probably did at one point, but I do not know that anymore. I have forgotten.
It's all right. It's not a requirement. I always wonder though. And it's funny too, because I'll listen back to the podcast, and if people don't know their moon and rising sign, I might re-listen to the conversation and guess. I'm gonna say, like, I'm getting some strong earth vibes from you and some strong fire vibes. I mean, Sagittarius, obviously, but
that's for sure. That is definitely for sure. And I do dig deeply into those. That is astrology is not a huge part of my spirituality, but divination is. And so I do definitely dig into the sides of fire and earth and how that applies to me and my existence in the universe, for sure.
Oh, I love that. Tell me more about divination. Like for you, like what do you do with your divination work?
Um, I do like to take either objects. It started, a long time ago with tarot, but you can take objects that are close and personal to you, and you can kind of wrap your energy around those to have a focal point and a source to just kind of guide you through the universe, because it's all around us and it encompasses us all, and you encounter so much different energy as you interact with people, even through this format, that sometimes you need to self-harness, tether, if you will, and kind of see what messages are coming back to you as you cleanse your own energy. And I know sometimes it sounds out there, and I don't really care because it served me quite well in my existence. And I believe that everybody does this. I don't care what denomination of religion that you are. I think everyone does this in their own way. We just all call it something different.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And also, it comes back to also not needing to understand everything that's different with just acceptance and love, just because it's not the dominant paradigm. I mean, to me, this kind of work is it's like Tuesday, right? Like I like to call it woo, right? Like it's just, I'm woo, right? I'm really into like earth-based spirituality and like the stars and all of that kind of stuff. So I love it. And thanks for sharing that. That's actually a very, do you do any rituals for this time of year, solstice?
I have in the past, and I'm glad you bring that up, because sometimes you have to just hold yourself to the carpet. And I go, it really, I've been so busy over the last few years, the last two specifically, that I have not really done any ritualistic style work. And I would like to bring that. It's one of my goals for 2021 is to kind of calm it down and get back into doing the rituals that I know that help bridge me throughout the year. And I think it's really important work for everyone's spirituality, whatever it is, and whomever it is that you worship or don't, that you you control your bridge work. As you cross from one point to the next, build yourself a platform that is comfortable and spiritual for you, because I know that it makes it easier. It forces us to slow down and really take stock of what we're doing and who's around us. And so it's something I definitely could say that is lacking for me over the last couple of years, because you just keep going and building and going and going, and you forget, hey, slow down. And really, did you really need to accept that energy, or did you just burrow right through it? So yeah, I think it's important for us all to do, and I plan on it for sure.
Good. Is there anything that like a specific ritual that you do for this time of year? If you wanted to set the time aside and do it.
I think I like to do things that, well, first of all, I think that this type of work really needs to speak to your existence. So one isn't always, oh, well, yeah, let me grab that up, because it might not be how you harness your energy, and then you won't connect, right? I love candles, and I love incense. So those fire and wind, and I try to really connect there and build from there. Um, the fire is the focal point for me, and the wind energy from the incense is kind of how I spread it around. That's how I build and give me the direction of where I'm going, right? And so those are my go-tos typically, but like I said, it really does have to match who you are.
Yeah, it does.
So
And
listen.
this is why I love to talk about this stuff, because for me, spirituality, I didn't even start getting into it till I was 31, 10 years ago. And it really has been a process of like just connecting with other people and hearing about their practices, and like kind of noticing what glimmers, right? Like what kind of things sort of speak to me. And then going to like ceremonies with teachers and things like that who share their practice, and just sort of vibing into that. I call ritual work slowing down to speed up, because as you slow down, as you're more connected, I believe that God is a supernatural force that can like take one Instagram post and send everything viral and like answer a lot of questions, right? Like, or like having that one conversation with the right person at the gas station that like ignites like your next big idea or something like that, right? So it's when you're aligned, it's like the difference between spiritual connection and spiritual alignment. Alignment is like lube for life, right? Like it's really putting you on the right path to do what's yours. So anyway, thanks for sharing that. One last question. I know you have like pretty much grown up kids. How are you in this season of your life? Because I know there's probably a few people who listen to this podcast who are also like, approaching a season of like releasing kids from the nest. Is there anything that's coming up for you around this season, or just reflections you have?
Well, I think it's an interesting time in parenthood, because you have to find your footing again. It's just like when they're first born, you're just like, oh, I would find my footing as this parent to this being, right? And I find myself with some of those same feelings now. That I'm just like, well, now I'm parenting this being that's an adult. This is not a baby. I still need to nurture, and I'm always going to be mom, but the landscape of that has definitely changed, to more of molding these adults that are 18 and 19, that still need me. They definitely need me, but they need me in a different way. And so, I find myself having more worldly conversations with them. I can open up about certain things that I've witnessed in the world and related to how the activation will be out there in the world through, one in college, you're in college now. And, just kind of being able to bridge off those experiences in my life that they can apply to their lives now that we couldn't do, 12 years ago. And so it's a new landscape. It's exciting. It's scary. And it's a little sad too, because I have to say goodbye to little things like, you always see your children as little ones, but when you look at this manifestation of human that is, just ready to take the world on, and you're like, wow, you don't even need a juice box or a diaper, or just, you have these things flash through their lives of being small. And it's a little sad. So that's a new experience for me, but it's also exciting and feels great.
Ah, that's great. And of course, as an entrepreneur, you have plenty of things to fill up your life. I like to say it's like the 24/7 plan of business. You can do a million things a day and never get done.
Yeah, yes, you could. That is the way that it is. But entrepreneurship is it's in my blood. My parents were entrepreneurs, and so I remember the lifestyle and the dedication and the things, the ups and downs and the things you have to deal with, right? So it kind of set me up for a good pathway as the businesses that I've operated and owned over the years. I'll just always throwing is this the last? Just this is is one of many. It'll be more, and so it does keep you busy. It keeps you busy and focused. If it's it's not for everyone, but if it is for you, it will definitely keep you focused and busy.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Vanguard Media Online. You find the link in the notes, or just type it into your little browser, but definitely stay tied in, because Tiffany is curating some amazing women in cannabis and just helping to create a space for unity and uplift.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's been great.